Okay, so the next section I think would be from 9 to 20. Does that look good to you?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so do you want to start or do you want me to start?
However you feel.
Okay.
You call the shot.
Okay. Okay, well, why don't you start and then I'll go and we'll kind of go back and forth like that. It'll be interesting.
What then? Are we in a better position? Not at all. For above we have made the charge, For above we have made the charge that Jews as well as Greeks are all under sin. Just as it is written, there is not a righteous man, not even one. There is no one who has any insight. There is no one who searches for God. All men have turned aside. All of them have become worthless. There is no one who shows kindness, not so much as one. Their throat is an open grave. They have deceived with their tongues. Venom of asps is behind their lips, and their mouth is full of cursing and bitterness. Their feet are swift to shed blood. Ruin and misery are in their ways, and they have not known the way of peace. There is no fear of God before their eyes. Now we know that all the things that the law says it addresses to those under the law, so that every mouth may be silenced, and all the world may become accountable to God for punishment. Therefore, no one will be declared righteous before him by works of law, for by law comes the accurate knowledge of sin.
Okay, great. So I'll start again at 9?
That's up to 20.
Yeah, great. Okay, what then? Are we better than they? Not at all, for we have already charged that both Jews and Greeks are all under sin, as it is written, there is none righteous, not even one. There is none who understands, there is none who seeks for God. All have turned aside together, they have become useless. There is none who does good, there is not even one. Their throat is an open grave, with their tongues they keep deceiving. The poison of asps is under their lips, whose mouth is full of cursing and bitterness. Their feet are swift to shed blood. Destruction and mercy are in their paths, and the paths of peace they have not known. There is no fear of God before their eyes. Now we know that whatever the law says, it speaks to those who are under the law, so that every mouth may be closed, and all the world may become accountable to God. Because by the works of the law no flesh will be justified in his sight, for through the law comes the knowledge of sin. So I think that's very close.
Yeah. You notice there's a lot of references there, the quotes from from the Hebrew scriptures there.
Yeah, quite a few. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. There was just that one verse that's probably a minor thing. In 12, mine says, there is none who does good. And yours said something different?
All have turned aside.
They have become useless.
All have, 12, it says, all men have turned aside. All of them have become worthless. There is no one who shows kindness.
Oh, shows kindness.
Not so much as one.
Huh. Okay, yeah, so that is a little bit different then.
And 10 is the one that says, for it is written, there is not a righteous man, not even one.
Right. Yes. So we're back to...
That's in verse 10.
So that's more of the bad news. That is all of us. That is, every single person ever born. That's...
Yeah, that we're all born in sin.
Yeah, we're all born in sin, and it's, it really...
Because there should be no superiority.
Right, well, and not just that, but, we're all in sin. We are all in rebellion in our natures towards Jehovah, right? That's what we're born in.
Yeah, sin is the reference of sin is falling short of the mark.
Yeah, which is because of our rebellious hearts, of
Mhm.
course. Yeah. I think we seem to be pretty much on the same page on that.
I would say so, yeah.
Okay.
Mhm.
The next section would be, I guess, 21 to 26.
Mhm.
Does that work for you?
That sounds good.
Okay, and I'll start.
You want me to start?
I can start this one.
Okay.
Yeah, okay.
Mhm.
But now, apart from the law, the righteousness of God has been manifested, being witnessed by the law and the prophets, even the righteousness of God through faith in Jesus Christ, for all those who believe. For there is no distinction, for all have sinned and fall short of the glory of God, being justified as a gift by his grace through the redemption which is in Christ Jesus, whom God displayed publicly as a propitiation in his blood through faith. This was to demonstrate his righteousness, because in the forbearance of God he passed over the sins previously committed, for the demonstration, I say, of the righteousness at the present time, so that he would be just and the justifier of the one who has faith in Jesus.
So mine reads, but now, apart from law, God's righteousness has been revealed, as the law and the prophets bear witness. Yes, God's righteousness through the faith in Christ Jesus for all those having faith, for there is no distinction. For all have sinned and fall short of the glory of God, and it is a free gift that they are being declared righteous by his undeserved kindness through the release by the ransom paid by Christ Jesus. God presented him as an offering for propitiation through faith in his blood. This was to demonstrate his own righteousness, because God, in his forbearance, was forgiving the sins that occurred in the past. This was no demonstration. This was to demonstrate his own righteousness in this present season, so that he might be righteous even when declaring righteous the man who has faith in Jesus.
Okay.
Up to 26.
Yeah. So there's a few differences there. Some are just slight changes in words that are very close. Like in 24, mine says redemptions, yours says ransom.
Mm-hmm.
Those are very similar.
Yeah, same, different words, same thought.
Yeah. Just a quick note about this. The word redemption or ransom can be used in this instance, so the New World Translation is not incorrect in using it here. However, if you've talked with JWs much, you may have noticed the word ransom is very often thrown into the discussion as a very broad term that doesn't mean what the scriptures say it actually means regarding Jesus' ransom sacrifice on the cross for wicked sinners. Where the Watchtower did make a change in their so-called translation is in 1 Timothy 2 verse 6. They change it from simply ransom, which is accurate, to corresponding ransom. They add that word corresponding in because they teach that Jesus was an equivalent to Adam, who just happens to have not sinned while he was on earth. This is part of the subtle brainwashing process that they use to try and lessen or downplay who Jesus is and what he has actually accomplished. This is something you may have noticed that all cults do. One of their goals is always to make little of Jesus in order to make much more of themselves. This way, they can still say they believe in Jesus, without giving him the honor, praise, and worship that is due him. And then I noticed actually that here and in other areas as well, like in 24, my translation says his grace, and yours says his undeserved kindness.
Mm-hmm.
Why do you think they paraphrase it like that? Like, is grace like not a known word in the Jehovah's Witnesses?
Well, we used to use grace, of course, was used in the King James version, and When we use the King James Version, we use grace.
Mm-hmm.
But in the modern English, in 21st century English, we don't use the word grace to express loving kindness.
You don't?
We don't use grace like in everyday language, do we?
Oh, yeah, we do. Everybody I know does. Is that just maybe something in your religion that you just don't use that word
Oh,
anymore?
it's just a clearer expression, I think.
You think it's clear? It sounds kind of like it's limiting, because grace means a lot more than just undeserved kindness.
What does grace, like, if you ask the average teenager nowadays, or young person, when you ask them to explain the word grace, they wouldn't have a clue. But they understand loving kindness.
I don't know. I think they would have an idea. I think probably my concern too, I don't think it's I understand about updating words and not using, there are plenty, the King James has the word unicorn in it. We don't use that word anymore, so, you update, right? But
the young people understand unicorn because they
oh yeah, but
they use, they see movies and things like that.
Sure, but then it means something completely different in movies than it actually meant in the King James.
Mm-hmm.
It just meant a one-horned animal.
But they understand the word unicorn.
Yeah. So, but that's why we don't use that word.
This is why we use loving kindness, because we want people who don't know biblical words, because grace is a biblical word.
Well, so is propitiation, and that's in yours, though, isn't it?
Yeah, well, you ask a kid who goes to school, they understand what that word means.
They know what propitiation means, but
yeah,
they don't know what
covering.
But they don't know what grace means?
And they wouldn't understand what grace means in the biblical sense, because the propitiation is a modern day English word.
But it's not used.
It isn't referring anything biblical.
It's
a word that's can be used anywhere.
I think if I asked any
teenager, and the same as loving kindness. But grace isn't used in everyday language, and that's what we want to. That's why we use the translation is modern day English language, that somebody who doesn't understand anything in the Bible can still get the gist of it.
That's really odd. That seems really backwards. Maybe that's a cultural thing different in your religion than it is from other areas, because like I've always. Grace is, I grew up with an unbelieving father and going to secular schools, and we never had a problem using the word grace. But propitiation, we had no idea what that was. We'd never heard the word. It just was not. Kids,
you understand that as that's covering something.
Sure, but as a kid, like you're using.
You're
using the argumentation that kids wouldn't know what grace is.
Just a moment now. I said God's loving kindness. And if I said God's grace, if you weren't religious at all,
mm-hmm.
would you get the gist of what God's grace is?
Sure. It's just always a word that we use.
When you see, grace is, people associate with graciousness is like being nice. Well, it's more than being nice.
Right. It's more than undeserved kindness. So
loving kindness or loyal love. Loving kindness and loyal love are really cover a great picture. Cover a lot.
Well, that's the thing. The word grace in the biblical sense covers so much more than just the term undeserved kindness.
But it's biblical. But it's associated with biblical term, and anybody who isn't biblically inclined hasn't the foggiest understanding of what grace.
Well, even if that were true, I disagree with that, but even if that were true, then wouldn't it make sense to keep that word just like they kept propitiation or sanctification or glorification, any of those?
Well, then they would end up then a person who wouldn't understand what that loving kindness means, what that grace means.
But
they understand loving kindness or loyal love.
But it doesn't even say loving kindness. You've got undeserved kindness, which is not wrong. I'm not saying it's wrong. I'm just saying it sounds like they've sort of taken away from the depth of what the biblical.
Well, it is undeserved, isn't it?
Sure, of course.
Well, then.
I'm not saying it's a wrong term. I'm just saying it just sounds kind of flat compared to the fullness of what grace is.
But isn't it a better expression because it covers? It is undeserved, whereas your expression is the grace, right? Well, grace, it doesn't bring out the fact that it is undeserved.
But that is the meaning of it, so it does. So if anybody needed to look up the definition of it, that would be easy enough. I would think a lot of people have to look up what propitiation means, because that's not a modern word that we use in everyday language. So it's same kind of thing. So that was just my question. I mean, it's, you know, kind of a small thing, but it just seemed odd to me that they would take away the word, because it's such a beautiful, rich word.
But most people that I've talked to have used in discussing that, why it's different. They say, "Oh yes, that explains it much better. It's a more plainer expression."
It is plain, but it's not. But it kind of robs it of its depth.
And that's the whole gist of what the Bible should be. It should be plain and understood.
So then why did they use propitiation? I'm just saying there's a difference in logic there, to go to those two different words and to leave one and change the other.
They could have used covering.
Yeah, they could have, exactly. Why not then? Because, like I said, that's not a normal word used in English language. Mm-hmm. It's a biblical word, which is a good word, and actually I don't think it should be removed. I think it should be kept and explored and studied, but so should grace.
But covering is not as important as showing the loving kindness of God in a broader sense, rather than grace. You know what I mean?
Well, I think
that's a critical thing. That's more important.
I think they're both deeply important, and that's why they should be accurate. That's why because I know there are people who want to fight to get words like propitiation and sanctification and that kind of thing out of there, because they're big words that people don't use anymore. But no, they're such rich, important words. They need to be kept. And so anyway, we're getting a little bit off topic. I just wanted to. It was a point of interest that I've noticed that it's over and over again. It kind of just seems kind of flat when they do it that way. But anyway, so.
Well, that's an opinion, but as I say, we have. When in talking with a lot of people, that has been the exact opposite. As they say, "Oh, that's so much more plainer."
Yeah, and I would disagree.
You know, so it's an opinion. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. I noticed that she kept saying loving kindness instead of undeserved kindness. That might just be a slip-up because she's older. Maybe not. But either way, her whole argument is absolutely nonsensical. Have you ever heard of an unchurched teenager or any other unchurched person using the word propitiation? Have you ever heard them to not know what the word grace means? This whole line of thought that she was presenting was really crazy sounding to me. I'm not sure if it's even really a Watchtower-sourced defense or if it was just more of her creative debating at this point. Of course, undeserved kindness is not technically a wrong paraphrase of the word grace, but it is a little on the shallow side. Unmerited favor is actually a little more accurate. But again, either way, the only reason to paraphrase such a simple, common word like grace is to remove it from the mind of the JW. I mention that because I really think their specific choice of paraphrasing is very intentional. By using the word kindness, it can easily be grouped together with a generic idea of God just being all-loving, while basically ignoring how just and righteous he really is. That way, they can downplay their sin as just making mistakes sometimes. I think the idea is to get them thinking that, sure, technically God's kindness is undeserved, but he pours it out on everyone anyway. That completely ignores the fact that we are all wicked, rebellious sinners who deserve only God's wrath. That's why we need Jesus. When we begin to understand that reality, God's grace really is so much sweeter and deeper to us. In the next video, we'll have a bit more discussion about this passage and then move on to the next section.